Good evening, it's Lawrence from Suburban Astro Boy. It's great that you can join me for my first video, and for a while, ever since I created the Facebook page as well as the Instagram account, I've been meaning to make a video about how do I do astrophotography, how do I go from setting up my telescope all the way to producing my final image. As you might know, in Sydney it's been quite a wet summer, it's been raining almost non-stop, and I just didn't get the time to do it yet, but I finally thought tonight I might be able to get something done and show you guys, but unfortunately this happened. Hello everybody, it's now 8:30 and I was hoping to get started, but unfortunately the clouds have come early despite there being reports of not being any clouds to about midnight. It seems they have come early, and that's really preventing us from aligning this telescope or doing any imaging. And even though I didn't get an opportunity tonight to take some photos, it did give me the opportunity to set the telescope up. And so here's a video outlining the steps I've gone into setting it up. Telescope. It's a Takahashi FSQ85. On top of here is this little computer, which is a Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi does all the control for the cameras and the auto focusing. And then here we have a camera. This camera is a ZWO camera. It's APC size, the sensor size, so it gathers quite a large amount of light. This camera here is for guiding. It helps the mount to keep on track on following a star, so we need that, that's important. Here is an autofocuser which adjusts when there's temperature changes throughout the night, so I've got this temperature probe which does that. It was also important that I should mention that I need to use this weight to counterbalance the weight of the telescope, so I made sure that the telescope is balanced. I've used a compass. This compass is there so we can make sure that it points true south point. Pretty much this is the telescope setup, and it's ready to take photos as soon as it gets dark enough, and then we'll do some alignment and we're ready to take some pictures. So one of the great things you can do with old data is, well, you can reprocess it. Even though we didn't get data tonight, what better opportunity for me to show you how to process some old data. This one was of Orion's Nebula at the beginning of this year, and just to show you what are the steps that are involved in getting your image from the camera all the way to that final image that you can share with people. This is some data I've taken from the start of the year. This was of Orion's Nebula. So let me open up one of these files. These are the files that come from the camera, and so let me open that one up. This software here is called PixInsight. It's a specialized kind of software for astrophotography, and it's got a lot of different functions and image processing tools which are helpful in bringing out detail. It's a bit different to Photoshop in the sense that it's not created for kind of a general use for all sorts of images, but rather it's more created to bring out detail from noisy, low light images such as astrophotography. And so I'm going to show you how we process through an image. So this is what comes from the camera. It's black and white. So what we need to do is first debaya the image. So let me debaya this image. That's my camera profile. Move it there. Okay, so this is one single frame. I believe this was 5 minutes each. So still at the moment it looks quite dark with a bit of color, so we need to stretch the histogram a little bit out in this image, so we use the screen transfer function. Let me press that, and there's a bit of a, because mostly color cameras have a red sensor and then 2 green sensors and 1 blue sensor, so the green is the majority of the signal. So what I want to do is unclick that so that we stretch it without having too much green, and that's one single frame from the camera. So you can notice that, yeah, the details there. You can see the nebula, you can see Orion and Running Man, but you can see that there's a lot of noise, and so particularly in areas like here, you can see that there's noise and there's things that might look like it's part of the nebula. You kind of want to work out, and this is part of the processing tool, is to work out how to separate the real data from that noise so that we can bring out the detail. And you also notice it's a little brighter in the center, it's a bit red to the sides, all those kind of things we need to take care of in our image processing. So that's one single frame. So what we want to actually do is we want to get all our frames. So I've got all of my frames here. I've got, how many do I have? I've got 30 that are 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes, and then one that is 10 minutes. So I've got 31 frames. So what we want to do is we want to first debayer those frames, so we'll call it debayer. And we'll open up our debayer tool, which is already open. Let me close that, we don't need that anymore. I'm going to add the files. I'm going to go to my directory, which is in my documents, my astro work, there we go, my light frames. I'll select all that. RGB is the pattern of my camera. I'm going to output that into my debayer folder, and I'm going to run the debayer for all of them. So we'll let that run. It's working through those different images, so I'll give it a moment. Okay, so once that is done, let me close that. If we go into my folder, you'll notice in my debayer folder, I've got all my debayered frames. What we do next is, let me close that one, is normally if we got if we create dark frames and we use in-image calibrate. So normally if we have dark and flat frames, so dark frames are just camera frames that are so you take a photo the same length as you did for your photo outside, but you put the lens cap on, so it's complete darkness, and then after that exposure time you'll get an image that will contain the noise that's on the sensor at a particular temperature, and that's useful to get rid of noise that's present in the image, but these days I use dithering on my camera, which just means that for every picture I take, there's a slight shift in pixels, which helps to eliminate that noise, camera's pixel noise, which is normally red dots in the image after I calibrate and align the image. Flats are there when there's differences in illumination, and when there's dust moles on the picture. You basically take a picture with a bright source of bright light, and then you'll be able to distinguish where those dust moles are, and you can remove them. But I generally like to keep my lens or my telescope clean, so as my filter, so I tend not to use that these days, but that's the image calibration if we need to use it. But the next thing I'll do is I'll go to my star alignments. This will pretty much register all the images so that all the images are look the same in terms of rotation, as well as where the stars are in each picture. And so I'm going to create a new folder, call it Aligned. I'm going to add my debayered files. Let me go there, debayered. Sometimes, because I I'm not going to take as much care as I normally do in terms of producing an end result here, mainly because of the time. It does take me pretty much a whole day to be careful with all the variables and try to bring out as much detail as possible. So I'm not going to go through it, but normally I do also look through each image and make sure there's no images where the tracking might have not been good and some of the stars might have moved and those kind of things. So like I can show you a small example here. So if I go into Blink and open up my debayed images, just stretch that image properly, so let's stretch it. And then you can go through all the images. I better stretch this one actually because that was 10 minutes. Go there. Focus. And then you can go to all the images and see how this one in particular had a satellite that went across it. You can choose to get rid of that image, or I think it's still worthwhile keeping this image because there's a lot of data and this line will be taken out when we integrate anyways. Let's go through. And sometimes some images have the stars that are not round anymore, so let's try if I want that the stars have kind of elongated a bit. This one you can see that it's elongated a little bit, which means the tracking wasn't as good as possible, and so you can delete that. And sometimes there's actually a function that you can run and you can see how well the image was in terms of quality, and that's useful. See these two images rotated. I think there was a meridian shift at that point where the telescope had to turn from one part of the sky to the other part of the sky. Let me have a look. So yeah, they look generally pretty good for this focal length. This is sufficient. If you're shooting at something much closer, if a bigger telescope and more magnification, then you really do want to make sure that none of the stars are elongated so you can take them out of the process. All this kind of calibration and alignment and integration can be done all in one step. There is a little script that does it, but I tend to go through this way just so I have a little bit more control over the things. Okay, so let's align all the images. This does a bit of image registration, which fixes rotation and translation between the images so that all the images, the stars line up. So we're going to pick a particular file here. You would want to pick the file that's got the best data. I'm just going to pick one at random at the moment, so let's pick that one. We want to do projective transformation, and we're going to register and match all the images together. We're also going to generate some drizzle data. Now drizzle is an interesting thing because what drizzle does is it pretty much integrates the image when it does its first initial integration. It doubles the pixels. It's there to get more data out of the image, and there is more data in the image, particularly if you're shooting with a very small pixel size camera. You can generally get some more data out of the image by using drizzle data. So I'll put that on. So these are my images here. Just make sure I chose the debray ones, and I'm going to choose the alignment folder here, and everything should be fine. Star detection, integration will be automatic, and I'm going to run that now. Okay, so that's done. I can show you an example of what it looks like. So here's my alignment data now. So that's great. There's my debayer. See, it's also generates some drizzle data. We'll use that later. But if we open up our blink as well, which helps us to see all the images, let me remove all of those ones from last time. Close all images. Open. And we go to our lines, and we'll open them all. Loading. Okay, and you'll notice now that if we go through them, all the images have been lines. So the one that's been rotated, for instance here, you can see that it's also been rotated to correct the rotation. So now that they're all aligned, means now that we can now put all the images together, and because we have so many images here, it means all the noise that's in the image we can push down. So there's something called a signal to noise ratio. If we can push the noise away from the actual data, that means we can actually get that actual data out and pop it out from the noise. And so that's what we want to do, and that's part of the reason why we stack them together, is so that we can improve that signal to noise ratio and get more detail out of the photo. So let's close that. The image is now ready to be integrated, so I'm going to go down to our image integration. I'm going to add our files and lines. Yep, it's my line files. We're going to add the drizzle data that we also created. We can also create normalization files, and so what normalization does, it goes through each image, so it's an extra step where it compares the light levels for each image, trying to normalize them a little bit, and that's particularly handy if you've got data from different nights and white balance is a bit off and those kind of things, and you can correct for that, and that's brilliant. And also when they're particularly noticeable is when you've got two nights and the image frame has moved a little bit, and where the image frame doesn't quite overlap, you can see a line. Normalization can help get rid of that, so that's helpful. But here we go, here we've got our data here. We can also set a reference, so that we would set the reference of the best image we had in terms of the data. So let's set a reference there. So we average, normalize it, and we do scaling normalization. So we go down to pixel rejection. So pixel rejection is where we reject things such as noise, those lines we saw, the satellites that went across the image, those things we can reject. I normally use this one here, Windsor signal clipping. Sometimes general extreme, this one also works well, but Windsor signal clipping is quite good. Normally these are all fine. High ranges might cut out some of the stars, so we don't do that. We can play around with this, and normally if I've put extra care into my processing, I would play around them to get the best result, but we'll keep it default for now. Let's run that now. Here we go. So we've finally integrated the image. Let me get my screen transfer function, which stretches out the image. Sorry, another one. Where are we? Up we go. STF. There we go. And so if we stretch out, these are the things that were rejected on the screen, and you can see that there's some weird color artifacts. So you've got you've got the satellites that went through, another satellite also here. So those things were rejected. So some of these stars were rejected here, which that's where I would play around with the parameters to make sure those things are not taken out of the image. On this case, you see where some of the image had been rotated and there was noise from that, and that's been taken out as well. So if we look at the final integrated image, you'll notice that there's a lot more detail in there, and a lot of the noise has been taken out, and that's just simply because we've had lots of images and we've been able to push the noise away from the actual signal. And so again, if I open up, let's open up one frame and we'll compare. There we go, one frame. Let me do that. RGB. Close that. And the difference is pretty obvious. And so that's why we take, rather than taking one shot, which you sit there for 3 hours taking one long 3-hour shot, it is so much better to take lots of smaller ones, such as this one, which were 31 31 5-minute shots so that we can push that noise out and get most of the signal there, which is great. So let's zoom on that. Okay, as I said, we did generate drizzle data, and so what we're going to do is run drizzle integrate, which calculates, using that data for each image, works out how to scale the image, so it scales it by 2, which gives us a lot more data to play with, which is what we want. And these images, they're processed in 32 bits, so there's a lot of data in there. And so if for instance, if I save this image by itself, let's save it here, Astro Work, save. By itself, the image is 306 megabytes at that stage. And so that's quite big, and the images themselves are, if I can see it here, 6,248 by 476 pixels. So it's a lot of data there, and this particular picture is 16 bits. So there's a lot there. So let's add our drizzle files in. So let's go to our lines, select all. Won't worry about the normalization again. And this process is going to take quite a while, and it takes a lot of processing power, but it's something that is useful. So let's run that. Okay, so the drizzle integration is done, and we can close that. We don't need any more. Let's get our stretch tool. This one gives you the weights of the different files. It's not that important. You can still see some of that satellite going through it. But this is the end result after the drizzle. Let me use. And you might say there's not much difference between there, but this one has double the data. So if we zoom in and zoom into this one, we have double the pixels to represent the net velocity. So that gives us more data to work with, and that's what we want. So let's save that one. That's our drizzle integration. At this point, things get a bit bigger. That's probably an understatement, but if we look at the size, it is now 1.16 gigabyte per photo. And if we look at the size, does it give us a size here? Here we go, 12,496 by 8,352, and it's 32 bits. So that's quite a lot of data to work with. So we don't need that integration anymore. Now the next step we want to do, after we get all our frames integrated, is now we want to start to bring out some of that detail, so some of that nebulosity from the background, and we want to separate that even more. And so we want to, pretty much what we want to do is identify the colors that are in the background, and the color, and identify when those colors change, and that is possibly that's when our nebulosity begins. And because it's so bright, and sometimes it's not so easy to see whether that nebulosity should begin, and so we can use two tools to do that. We can also crop the image at this point if we want to get rid of any scaling stacking errors, but it looks pretty good actually. I can't see any stacking errors much in the picture. You can see some elongation, there's something funny there, but it's generally okay. You can see some stacking here actually, so if you go all the way to the end here, you can see along the edge there's a bit of stacking errors where they didn't quite match up, but that's fine. It looks fine at the moment, and because we dithered when we took the photos, so dithering being we're moving between each photo, we moved a few pixels left and right. You can see basically there's no noise anywhere in terms of pixel noise, and that normally comes up as red dots, and that's inherent of all CMOS cameras. But let's try to remove some of that background. There are two tools that PixInsight helps us with. We can use automatic or we can use more dynamic, and dynamic is what I prefer, mainly because we have more control over the picture. But let's try automatic first and see what we get. We can either subtract or division. Let's try both and see which one looks better, but let's try that. As just doing that, generating background samples, doing some least squares matrices, model, dividing the background model with the actual picture. Let's see what we get. 80, 90, 100. And there we go. So after we did a bit of background removal, you can see that this is what the camera was picking up. You can see that the edges, it was brighter in the center and darker at the edges. That's typical of a camera and telescope lens, but you can see that we see a bit more detail, particularly around this in the middle. We see a lot more, but there's issues around the side, so automatic doesn't always work. So we want to use the dynamic one instead. So let's go dynamic. We can zoom that in a little bit. Let's make it bigger. Zoom in a bit. So first thing I want to do is pick out all the background. You can see the stacking there, so you can see there's a bit of coloring, and we could have fixed that if we did the normalization before we did the integration, but we don't have time for that now. But let's make some samples, sample generation. Let's make them about size 8, and let's pick the edges first. So let's zoom in. This is probably, if we do this properly and carefully, this is a very timely process, because basically you want to pick out anywhere that is a background and not part of the nebula, and that's pretty difficult to see. If you look around here, you can see there's reds here too, and which part is nebula, which part is space. It's quite difficult to do, but so it takes a lot of care to do this well. So we'll just do a quick one now, but yeah, it does take a bit of effort to do it. So yeah, definitely there, you've seen the stacking error, but let's pick some places where we can be confident it's space. And we need to try also not to get into the stars, because that will muck up the background calculations for the model. Let's pick where we, obviously it's not. I'm just going to put up the tolerance a little bit because of that stacking error. Let's go 8, resize all. And you can even see here's a little bit of stacking, but that's fine. Let's go across. There, definite. There, you can see a bit of red here, just slight. I'm not sure if it's able to see it through the video, but I can see it on my computer. There. This, it gets a bit complicated here as well. Let's say there, and about here. There's a bit of red there too. So it is a little bit more tricky than it seems. Let's have a look down this way. Maybe at the corner, about there. And some of this red is not necessarily nebula. It's from the issues with not coma in particular, but in like the camera, it's brighter in the center, and I think that's coma, brighter in the center, and darker on the edges, and sometimes the CMOS colors and the cameras tend to have cast of different colors on them that go through. There's a lot of red there. We know this is definitely space there, definitely space there, definitely space there. Here you can see some more stacking areas along the edge, which is why you would want to crop the image to begin with. And then a bit here, let's say, let's go to the end here, about there, some more there, one there. Let's go up a bit, and here, and there, and there, and almost there, up here, and let's keep going up, and about there, and there, and about there. Okay, so we've picked some samples in the image. I've just picked the outer ones to start with. So let's do a division up here. So let's try division and see what we get. Okay, so let's stretch that image. And there we go. So we've corrected some of the colors. So if we look at the background model, you can see, yeah, there's all sorts of different casts that happen, result of telescopes and camera areas and all that kind of stuff. But if we look between the two, you can notice we can see a bit more detail now, which is good. There's still, you know, some funny things like here down here, we've got a bit of yellow, and it's still quite bright around there. So we can keep working on that. I'm not gonna be too aggressive trying to get them out, but let's try to get some of this yellow out here, which doesn't look right. So let's go down here. See, there's some nebulosity around, so I want to be careful. Some of that yellow. I'll just try like one there and one there, see how that helps us. So let me try that again. Go. It's a little bit better. Maybe I can get some more around here and here and here. I don't want to go too much, otherwise we tend to have the same result as the automatic one, where it's a bit too aggressive, but we'll try to finish that a little bit more, fix that a little bit more. So let's go here, here. Maybe that one's not right. Let's have a look. Go down to here. Oh no, that's fine. Let's go here, here, here. There's a bit of red there, that's probably why. And then we'll go up here. Put some more of those ones. Try not to get the nebulosity. There's quite a lot of nebulosity around there, so I need to be extremely careful not to get it. Maybe just, it's a bit difficult there. Ooh. We'll see how we go. And maybe just up here a little bit, and there. And maybe down here somewhere. Okay, let's have a look. There we go. It's a little bit better. The yellow's a bit gone, there's a bit on the edge. A little bit more better here, so it's more darker now. It's not perfect, but it will do for now. Normally if I'm doing this, I would take a lot of care, try to get as much kind of uniform across the whole image, but I'm guessing, yeah, at the moment that's okay. The color does change a bit when you do that, but you know, that happens as we try to limit some of the background. Maybe I'll get rid of some of the middle ones so that we can fix that up a little bit. Let's get rid of some of the middle ones. Yeah, let's try that for now. So we can get close, a little bit closer to the original color. Yeah, there we go. That's probably good. It's close to the original color. It does have a bit of green. Oh, actually, it does have quite a bit of green in the center. We'll have to work that out. But let's try it one more time. Let's try that. That's fixed a little bit, so it's not as quite as pink, but that will do for the time being. So let's close everything, so we don't need our, we can have a look at our, close that, yes, and close that, close that. You can see from here the background model, so that's what we've tried to fix, is take out the hues of the camera itself. So here's the difference. So this is our original picture. After we've done some background, we can see we've got a little bit more separation between the background and the foreground, and so that's kind of what we wanted to do. Let's save that as DBE. and there is a bit of color difference, but you know, if we have more time, you can be a bit more careful with that and fix that. And plus, you can get rid of some of that green cast a little bit. So now we can either color correct that, or you can work on the current colors. There are options to color calibrate it either by using photometric color calibration using actual data, and using actual data about the metadata from the images themselves, but also actual data from servers around the place. Or you could just do an auto color, which also works. I've got a little script that does that, so I'm going to find that little script, utilities auto color. So we can run that and see the color it produces. We don't want to vary too much from the original color that came from the camera, because you know that's kind of the more colors that the actual colors that come from the nebula, and so you don't want to vary it too much. But sometimes you need a little bit of color calibration just to fix the background and foreground. So let's see after this what results we get, and if we're not happy with it, we can go back and continue on our processing. You can also do this by yourself without running a script. You would need to use this background neutralization, which you try to find the color of the general uniform color of the background, and that's why it's important to get your background extraction done correctly. And then after that, you can calibrate the color from comparing the brightest thing in the image to the darkest thing, and that would fix the color range in the image. But yeah, it's a bit of work actually to get colors correct. It does take quite a bit of effort, and sometimes you can cheat out and you can look online to see what other people have done and try to match those colors, but it is a bit of work, and it's even more work when you try to use these color cameras with particular filters like the dual band filter I've used, and try to separate it into Hubble palette. That requires even a lot more hours of work trying to get that correct, but generally yeah, I tend to try to keep it the same colors as what comes from my camera. Give it a moment, it's still working. I have noticed though, as the colors do also change sometimes on the filter used. If you use a light pollution like broadband filter that only cuts out sodium and those kind of light pollution ones, you do get a lot more blue. I noticed in my pictures of Orion, but when I use the dual band filter, which only lets through hydrogen and oxygen, I tend to get more hydrogen in the image. Okay, it's done the color calibration on the image. The colors are a bit different than was previously. I think the color's not too bad actually. I see the blues in the image and the reds, and so I think we'll keep this color calibration. Now the next process is there is still a green cast in the image, and that is because green is the majority of the data on the camera sensor, being two green layers on the camera. Let me just remove that. Help with the image a little bit. Let's see. There we go. So remove the green hue on the image. So now the colors are starting to come out as we would expect. And one of the things of color calibration though is it's helped us to bring out the blue, but there's a lot of the red that's now become a little bit harder to see. But that takes a bit of time to do as well. But let's continue on image. Now we've got our image. It's stretched so far. Do I want to? No, let's keep it stretched for now, but let's now convert it so it's no longer stretched. So if we get our image, so that's the image stretched. I'll make a copy of it. I'll show you what I mean. So if we make a copy of it and then I unstretch it, so that's what the image looks like at the moment, really. But because we stretched the histogram, we can see the image, what's in the image. So that's re-stretched. But let's grab this image now that we've corrected the colors. It's a bit off my screen. Let me just fix that. There we go. I'll just grab this the stretch on the image, move it there, apply it. Now it's no longer stretched, and I'll reset it, and there we go. So now the image is no longer stretched. So if I bring it onto the histogram equalize transformation and let me track it, you can see now the image not stretched and the colors are mostly aligned. So that's good. So we might, like in this case, we might want to realign the red a little bit. It's a bit off. So let's do preview on that. And then we can fix the red a little bit by grabbing the red and trying to realign a little bit. But it's up to personal taste here and a little bit of trial and error to what you like. But I think it's better if we bring out the red a little bit in this image. So we'll keep it as it is. So let's do that. Okay. So the next step now is to really work on the finer details now. So we can bring up some of the details in terms of see there's a lot of light here. We can bring out the details that are behind here. We can bring out some of the local details, and a little bit of histogram equalization in little sections. We can also use deconvolution or to bring out some of the kind of sharpen some of the details around the image. So there's a couple of things we can do. We can also use noise reduction. We can reduce noises here, but I tend now to leave the noise to last after I've processed all the image. But let's work on some of the things in the image. Let's work firstly on, let's say, fixing this really bright area. One way to fix it would be to take photos which are say 30 seconds rather than 5 seconds, and then use that data and then use that data to fix that area. But you can use auto HDR to fix it as well. So let's bring out the high dynamic range out of that. So let's first of all create oops, did I go to the right? Yeah, bring out the channel. Let's wait for that. 52, 51. So that's a lightness map. It's black and white. Let me drag it onto there, and that helps me just to distinguish the nebulosity from the background. So if I invert, you can see that the background is less red than the nebulosity and the stars. So let me go back. So that's what I want to work on at the moment. So let me remove, don't show the mask, and then we'll go to HDR, and let's say depends how strong you want it. Sometimes you might want it to take out all that brightness out of that, but other times you just want to be gentle on bringing out that detail. So let's go to the default and see what we get, and then we can play around with the parameters there. There we go, and you notice that with the general parameters, it does open up some of the things in there, but it is a bit strong on the image and a bit harsh. So let's undo that and play around with the parameters. Let's say we do more layers. So let's do a Gaussian scaling function rather than small scale. This is just, it makes it a little bit gentler on the picture. Let's try that. There we go. So this is a little bit more gentler on it, but we'll be able now to see more of that data that was hidden there, and so it makes a much more pleasant image. So that's helped bring out the detail there. The next step we want to do is local equalization. So let's keep that mask for now. Let's do a little preview. Notice how it does take a little while to do different functions and algorithms, and so one way to make it a bit quicker when you're testing parameters is to do a preview window. So let me pick a preview window there, not that one, sorry. Here, sorry. To that through there. And there we go. So we're quite close to that area. Let's do a bit of local equalization now. This helps equalize stretch the histogram in locally and look at certain features in the image and bring out the detail in them. So let's do something, let's say about there, because we're dealing with a really high or 32-bit images. Let's go 12-bit, and now we can apply it just on that preview so that we can see the difference in the preview. There we go. So we're going to go between the preview here. So it's not really so preview, this one here, undo. So you can see the difference it makes. So some of the black comes out, pops out of the image, and some of the snap velocity pops out a bit. So particularly in this area here, you can see that pops out between the two images. Let me show high preview. Yep. So we want to do that also to our main image now. So if we're happy with results, again, you can play around with parameters until you're happy with the results. And now when you're finished, we can apply that on the entire image, and we close that preview and let's apply it. Okay, so the local equalization is now done. So we've got as much detail as we can in that. There's one last step we want to do before we muck around with being creative, but let's first, what we're going to do now is deconvolution, which basically just helps to bring out some of the blurred features, to bring out a bit of that and unblur the image a little bit. But before we do that, we need to protect the stars, and so I'm just going to create a star mask. Let's create a star mask. This basically works by using, I guess, edge detection, and then also making use of the local features around the image. PixInsight does have something called StarNet, which is a bit more advanced than StarMask, and it's mainly used to extract the stars away from the image, so you have a starless image. But I do find sometimes that provides a better star mask, where with star mask you really have to play around with the parameters. Some of the larger stars will be missed if you don't, and some of the smaller features might also be missed if the parameters aren't correct. So it does take a bit of effort dealing with that. 99, 100, extracting. So this noise threshold that I've extracted helps me to determine the stars, and looking at it at the moment, I think it does have most of the stars, but the big stars aren't included, but that's fine for now. We won't worry too much. Let's apply that mask to our image. Mask, show mask, mask, invert mask. See, the stars are protected except for the larger ones. That's fine for now. Mask, show mask, and now we're going to deconvolute. Let's create another preview window. Let's say there. So have a look, and let's do a de-ring so any of the stars don't show ringing around them. Let's try the default parameters and see what we get. There we go. So if I zoom in, look at the photo and compare the preview to unpreviewing it, show and hide, no, not that one, this one here. So that's without it, that's with it. Let me zoom in so I can show you. So without it, with it. You can see it's de-blurred a little bit of it, and that's brought out some more of the detail, which is what we wanted. Out and in, out and in. So That does look quite good. You can keep playing around it to get the best results. As I said, with any of these algorithms, you can spend all hours of the morning doing it. At some point you have to settle on your parameters. So let's do that to the entire image now. So let's run that. Okay, so we've got as much out of the image as we can now. You can see it's quite detailed now when we zoom in, and that's fantastic. Let's close the star mask, and actually let's minimize that so we can use it for later. There we go, let's minimize that. Undo the mask. Let's get rid of that edges. There we go. So let's get rid of that stacking error that happened there. It is starting to bother me a little bit. So let's move that one there. Just going to move it slightly up to get rid of the bottom stacking and the top one. Click on OK. And that will. There we go. This has become useless now, being different size. Let's save this now. So let's save it. Call it. Click on. As you can see, it's still quite big. 1.6 gigabyte. Now at this point we can be creative. As much as we want to bring out all the colors, we want to again select. We want to try to get all the data out from the background. So we want to have a mask that only highlights all the things except the background. One way we can do that is let's say we focus on the red first. Let's go script, utilities, color mask. We can assign a color mask, let's say red. And then let's see what we get. If this isn't satisfactory, we might have to bring out some of that red a bit stronger, and then we can do the mask. Let's have a look. There we go. So we can see there's a lot of red missing. So I think first of all, it might be a good idea to try and bring some of that red out. Actually what I might do is make a copy of this, and then let's run histogram equalization on it. Let's see the reds, see if we can bring out some of that red. Not too much, just a little bit there. Like that. Close, let's then curve transform that, so it's a little bit big. I'm going to do a preview and see if we can bring out some of that, fix a bit of the red. There we go, just saturate it up a bit. There we go, you can see some of that red now, but there is a lot of, because we weren't too careful with the background extraction, there is a bit of red there that unfortunately is not right, but that's fine. Let's do that. Transfer that. Go, close that. Now there is a lot of the red there that isn't useful. Let me try to a little bit histogram equalization. Let's have a look. So we said that. Maybe take some of that red down. There we go. Now I can see a bit more better of it. Let's see if we do our script, color mask, red. Let's see what we get. There we go. So a bit more of the red. There is a bit of background noise, which I unfortunately can't avoid now. Let's also do a range mask on that. Let me click on range mask, range select, go back up, do a preview. Let's have a look. A bit more, and kind of go screen, so you can kind of see it a little bit better. We want to try to get as much of the nebulosity as we can. Let's say about there, and then the lightness, and we're going to fuzzy it a little bit. There we go. There we go. That's looking better. That's most of it there. Let's make it a bit blurry and make that range mask. So that just helps us to create a mask with the features we need. That's particularly useful for galaxies. That one. So if we make this the same size as this one, you can kind of see it's got a majority of the big ones, and this other one has some of the red ones that we were missing. So that's just going to add these two together, and these Pixmax mouse. So let's go use a single expression. We're going to create a new image, and we're going to do a simple range mask plus, and the one here, which is drizzle integration DBE phone CMR, and that. Oops, sorry, this one. And there we go. There's our kind of our masks. Let me close that. Minimize that. We might use that again, and I'll minimize this one. We might use that again. Definitely don't need this one anymore. As a mask, mask show, there we go. So I've got our main features, that's our other features, show mask, and we're going to go to our curve transformation, and this is where we can boost things about. So let's track the changes, go to our RGB, that's where the majority of the image is. So let's so bump up a little bit of the brightness there. We can move this down so we can make that darker around there. Let's play around with the image a little bit. There, which doesn't look too bad. And then we can bump the saturation up. So there we go. So you already see that with the saturation, it is a lot popping out of the image there, the details. We can check if I can go into the top of this window. You can see the difference between them two. So it's already starting to look better. Meaning we see some of the details. If we have the time we need to be careful with the background, we can make sure that the outer images are also not, the outer details are also not taken out of the image. You can see some still, which is good, but yeah, more work can be done to see majority of those. If we go down there, you can still see bits here and there, which is great. So let's continue to just play around this a little bit longer and apply that. So there we go, let's apply. Okay, let's reset that. Now we can keep playing with it if we want to. Not too much there. Let's say there. Can pop the brightness a little bit up there, maybe a bit more contrast. You can play around with this all day. And there, that's good. We also want to make the background more darker. That's something that's useful. So let's invert the mask. Now we're looking at the inverted mask, and then we can grab that, and we can grab that darker. So not too dark. The trick with image processing is you don't want to do too much at once. You want to take incremental steps. Otherwise, you run the risk of cutting out data and clipping data. As you can see here, it's clipping the data. So you want to take little incremental changes. Maybe move that closer. There we go. A little more incremental changes. Say about there. That looks okay. So that's good. There, reset the mask. I'm gonna remove the mask now, so let's remove the mask. And so now we're playing purely on the image, and now I'm gonna just tighten it up a little bit more. darken a little bit more. Maybe make that not so bright. And have a look between two images. So it's a lot darker, which is good. This is what we want. And then apply that. So this is where you're creative, and you can be creative with how much saturation you put into it, and yeah, it takes time, but yeah, you can see it's quite noisy. We'll work on the image noise in a little while, but let's see if I can bring out some of that red. So let me apply maybe the red one. So maybe apply this one and go into histogram. Let's have a look. You can just boost the red slightly more. Boost the red. And like that. There is a difference. So you can see a little bit of the outside, a little bit better, which is good. So let's apply that. There we go. So it's looking better already. You can see a lot of the outside details, and the main nipple are there. That's great. Let me remove the mask. Remove mask. Something we can do is enhance the darken region. See, we can work on getting rid of some of the blue outline, but that's okay for now. Let's go into script, utilities, and we want to go into dark structure enhance. This will enhance the areas that are dark. So let's run that. There we go, that's done. Is there any difference? Let's have a look. Back, forward. Slight difference. Maybe dark areas around there. And the area in here can be a bit darker, but that's fine. I think that will do for now. I mean, it was a quick process. It wasn't as long as I would have liked to do it. But the next stage now is to focus on that noise. So let's remove all this stuff. And if you do look close, you can see it's quite noisy. We can work on that now. So let's close all this stuff. Save this one as, let's say, final there. And then going to resize it. At this resolution, it's hard to deal with, mainly with noise reduction. So we're going to rescale it, resample it. We're going to put it back to its original pre-drizzle data, which is 50%, which puts it, still preserves 32-bit, which is great. So let's go back to the original. It looks small, but it's not. There we go. So that's the original size, and that's 6,000 by something still, so it's still quite high. 5,806 by 4118. That's after we cropped the image a little bit. And now we're going to save that as final. Now you can do noise reduction in PixInsight, which is great, but I'm going to use another piece of software, which is great, which uses AI to cleverly remove noise, and it's great for astronomy, great for astrophotography photos. So let's save this as a TIFF. Save. Unfortunately in TIFF, we'll leave it 32-bit, but Windows doesn't display 32-bit correctly, so we'll change it later. But 32-bit for now. We don't need compression. We'll save that. There we go. So here's our final TIFF, 280 megs. We'll close it. Now that program, we'll open up this program called Topaz Denoise. So we'll open that up. There we go, and I'll just drag the final into there. Now the XISF format has a lot of metadata, and that's why we use that to process the images, but the final images we can do with TIFF, which does maintain that high quality doing that. Okay, so now you can already see the difference this program makes using AI. So that's the noise image and that's the non-noise image. But we need to work a little bit on the parameters. Let's go low light, because astronomy tends to be low light. There we go, so you can see the difference already. The noise is practically gone, which is great. And we can recover more of the data. We can work on the sharpness a little bit. Let's say 15, 10 seems to be good sometimes. And there we go. Look at the sharpness also gets taken care of. Particularly around here, you see that the noise is removed, which is great. Let's go to, so at the moment we're at 100, let's go to 50. So it's amazing how far noise reduction has come, and particularly using AI models to work out how to take out noise without removing precious data. And you can see the difference here. That's the noisy image, and as we go across it, the noise is practically gone. It's become quite a nice smooth image, which is what we want. So we're going to save that image, final denoise. So here we have to put it down to 16-bit, unfortunately, because 32-bit, yeah, Windows can't deal with that properly. So let's save. There we go, that's done. There we go. So we'll wait for that to finish. 22, 40, 50, 70. Okay, we'll close it and then we'll have a look at our image now. Make it the same size, and you can see the difference. So there's a noisy image and there's a non-noisy image. If we zoom in, you can immediately tell the difference between these two images, and the denoising makes all the difference. So that's our final image. So if I go back to the very first frame that we did, and I'll show you how much difference it makes after you apply image processing. So this was the first frame. Let me debray it again, debray it. There we go. Put that on there. There we go. I'm going to stretch that image. So you can see the difference. That was the first frame that came out of the camera, and this is after you've processed it. Let me make it the same size. After you process it, you get all the detail, and you've got those lovely photos. Well friends, thank you for watching. I hope in the future at some point we'll have some clear nights where I can finally create a video about how to acquire images from my telescope and all the processes involved in that. But until then, thanks for watching. Lawrence from Suburban Astro Boy signing out.